This RealAg Radio podcast is brought to you by Economics. Everyone has questions about their farm. From general inquiries to in-depth fertilizer questions, find straightforward answers at nutrien-economics.com.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Monday edition of the show. Thanks so much for making RealAg Radio and the entire lineup here at Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. Also, of course, big shout out to everybody listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast. Okay, it's Agronomic Monday today. Hopefully you had yourself a great weekend. Things went well, and you are refreshed, ready for the week that is ahead. And as we enter the back end of October, a lot of work to be done. We got fall work happening in Western Canada, even though the temperatures have kind of turned a little bit more. It feels like we're kind of out of fall, and now we are all of a sudden dipping our toe into what feels like a little bit of winter, unfortunately. And out in Eastern Canada, there's some. We're going to hear from Pete on his weather update, as he always likes to give. But still pretty nice weather here this week, as there's a lot of corn yet to harvest. If you have any feedback on today's show, we'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. Of course, you can also find us across all the different social media platforms. Also, you have the ability to call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. You press the number 3 after you dial that number, and you leave me a message. Again, that number is 855-776-6147. I did mention Peter Johnson. He is going to join us here today, and we are really going to we're going to dive into getting an update on what's happening with that corn harvest. We're going to report out on some of the early dawn samples of that corn. That's not encouraging. We've got some chillier weather, of course, which in Western Canada leads us to talk about fall fertilizer when it comes to nitrogen. We got some audience questions as well. We're also going to talk about, we may get to a situation with Africa and allowing some GM crops. So we've got a lot to discuss with Pete. We also have a product spotlight here today. So in the product spotlight, we're going to hear from Chad Garrod. He is with Corteva, and we're going to talk about Corteva's Lumigen and some of the seed treatment offerings they have in that Luma family. Do want to mention tonight on the Agronomist, which is RealAg in prime time, 8 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Mountain time. We've got a topic tonight that is, it really applies to people of any geography. So if you're farming in Canada or the U.S., you're going to want to check this out tonight. It's all about spot spraying and talking about some of the latest technology stuff on the horizon, what's coming out. And it's Lindsay Smith is going to have so much money because the promo says spot spraying to save money, and so money came to mind. She's going to have so much fun exploring this topic. The guests tonight are Carl DeConnick Smith and also Sprayer 101's Tom Wolf will be the guest tonight. So both those guys are pretty passionate about some of this technology. And this and some of it's right here is now. This isn't stuff that we're talking about 15 years from now. This is stuff that is out there today. And I know we're going to see a lot about it at Agritechnica. It does bring advantages, right? The better we have from a sensor perspective and the ability to spot spray, it is going to create the opportunity to use different kinds of products than when we are spraying every single acre and really not being selective. So this is important tech. Also, the weed resistance story fits into this as well. So check out The Agronomist tonight, hosted by Lindsay Smith. It's going to be fantastic. You can watch it on our YouTube channel, or by going to realagriculture.com/live. If you have any questions about the program or how to tune in and you have some troubles, just send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. Okay, let's take a break, and we'll get to Peter Pete Johnson right after this.
Your Co-op Grow team are your local experts because we live here too. Our agronomic specialists stay up to date with the latest research and technology to help support your entire farm operation. Talk to our team for advice tailored to your farm's needs. We have recommendations to help you optimize your crop yield and quality while enhancing the health of your land. Co-op, we're all growing together. Here for your farm, here for your family. Learn more at coop.crs/farm.
Peter Johnson at WheatPete.RealAgriculture.com. I'm the host of The Word, and I love doing The Word. I love the questions. I love the challenges. I love having to apply agronomics to all over the globe and areas outside of my normal jurisdiction. Also, I love the feedback the most, where growers challenge me, tell me about their plot results, help me to learn. The Word, absolutely the best part of my day.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
Let's get rolling here with Agronomic Monday. Shaun Haney, your host, and joined by Peter Pete Johnson. Hey, Pete, how's it going?
It is a glorious sunny day in Ontario, Shaun. You know that as soon as Pete has sunshine, he is in an even better mood. Like I always try to be in a good mood, but things, I wish it wasn't as wet as it is, because we've had a lot of rain. Some growers pushing now 8 inches of rainfall in October. It doesn't bode well for harvest or wheat planting. But yesterday was sunny. I think nearly the first sunny day in all of October. Today it's sunny again. They're talking about sunshine tomorrow. And if they could just change the forecast after that and keep it sunny, Pete would just be ecstatic.
Well, it's a good thing you don't live in Western Canada, Pete, because we've turned chilly. Like last week, beautiful weather. And like Wednesday in Lethbridge, we got a high of -6 Celsius. Eek. Snow, sleet, eek, yuck. The worst.
Yeah. I don't envy anyone in Western Canada those conditions yet, and they better not happen here. We have barely touched the corn crop here in Ontario, and still edible beans and soybeans yet to harvest. Like, we need some weather yet here, that's for sure.
Yeah, reminded again, like just every year, just how much longer the season is for the Central Canadian, Eastern Canadian farmer because of the crops grown relative to the majority of Western Canadian farmers. Like, in the Farmer Rapid Fire on Thursdays, people will say, well, I've been done for 2 months, right? And when it comes to talking to some of the Eastern growers, they're like, yeah, we're just starting to just tiptoe into the corn crop. So it's big differences based on crops grown. And length of season, like Canada's a big place. As you go north, it gets a shorter season, Shaun. It's just the reality of the geography we deal with. So going to be big differences, no doubt. One of the good things, though, about the temperatures turning a little bit chillier in Western Canada is we can start getting some of that nitrogen on, doing that fall work. So if you are one of the farmers that's trying to get some fall work done, and there's a lot this year based on how open the fall has been. The temperature, the soil temperature is very, very critical about when you should or should not be applying nitrogen in the fall time.
Absolutely, Shaun. And realistically, you want it the soil temperature at under 5 Celsius if you can at all. If it's over 5 Celsius, you get some transformation or can get some transformation of that nitrogen into nitrate. And if it gets all the way to nitrate, then it's quite susceptible to denitrification losses. If you're in Manitoba and you actually get moisture so that you can lose it from too wet soils or from leaching, or just like bad things happen to nitrogen when it gets into that nitrate form. We really want to keep it in the ammonium form, in the ammonia form if you're putting on anhydrous ammonia. And so you get out there and you say, gosh, it's nice, we want to get this job done. Yeah, you might get it done, but sometimes it comes at quite a penalty. They did some research, some studies down in the U.S. a few years back, and a lot of growers in the U.S., even using anhydrous ammonia, treating it with N-Serve, the nitropyrin that reduces the potential of loss. If they switch to spring application rather than fall application, in many of those studies, they could reduce their nitrogen rate by at least 25%, in some cases by 50%. And you just go, man, that doesn't work very well. And that's not every year, but you put it on too warm a soil, you really do set yourself up for some issues.
Yeah, there's a balance, right, between getting stuff done. We want to be productive people, but no different than we know the consequences if we harvest a crop too early. Putting on nitrogen too early, we're sort of there's a saying about peeing in a wind, I think, kind of thing, doing it to yourself. Timing's important, and a part of the timing is obviously when it comes to nitrogen, it is the soil temperature. Fertilizer is expensive. I know it is because I hear from the audience all the time about it. So we got to make sure that we're not creating any extra loss for that expensive input based on the timing decision that we ourselves are making, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes, we treat that nitrogen and we think that's going to be the panacea that protects us. All of the products that we use with nitrogen, they're good products. They perform as advertised, but they only last for so long. And if you push the envelope too much, at some point, they just don't do enough. And so you put yourself at some pretty good risk of an economic hit in terms of that nitrogen application.
Okay, I want to dive into Ontario corn harvest. We were talking about it a little bit earlier, and we're just getting started. Now, the results of the Dawn survey on toxins are out here today on this Monday, and you and I have been talking about this for the past couple of weeks. There is some concern on the Dawn levels, and the survey indicates, it supports that concern, I guess, is the best way to put it, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And so growers want to look at the results of the corn Dawn survey. Just go to fieldcropnews.com. It's posted there. But 2018, we all go back to 2018. In 2018, a full quarter of the crop, when they did that survey, was over 5 parts per million of Dawn in the grain, and 40% of the crop was over 2 parts per million. And 2 parts per million is really the critical level we'd like to keep it under. If it's under 5, we can generally find a market, but if it's over 5, it gets really, really tough. This year, we're looking at about 22% of the crop at over 2 parts per million. Just 5% of the crop over 5 parts per million. But that's when they took the survey, and that's a snapshot. And what's really interesting is that as we've gotten into the corn crop here, I get more and more reports of growers harvesting corn. I had a grower text me this morning. They harvested corn. They took it out of the field because they knew it looked like it was a problem. The test came back at 7 parts per million, over 7 parts per million. And you just go, wow, that is going to be a challenge to deal with. And this was corn that was sprayed. We're a bit surprised. We're not really surprised, but we're a bit surprised at the variability. And we were hopeful, Shaun, because sometimes you can get visual mold on the gibberella mold, that pink mold growth, the fusarium mold, the white mold growth on the cob. And you can see that and say, oh, I'm cooked. But then when you do the test, for some reason, it hasn't generated the Dawn, the deoxynivalenol in the crop. And so you get away with it. This year, it looks like it's almost the other way, that we're seeing some mold growth, and it's resulting in a lot higher toxin levels than we would have expected. So lots of concern out there in the countryside about this. Not the only concern. As we push to get corn out of the field earlier, we want to get out there at 33%, 32%, so we can get it off and pay the drying. To heck with the drying costs. Just get it out of the field, because we don't want those toxin levels to increase. But as everyone knows, when you take that really wet crop and you start trying to run it through a combine, we break up more kernels. And the other thing is that our kernel weight, or at least our test weight, I should be careful, it's not the same thing, but it definitely looks like our test weight is borderline. Lots of growers talking about a grade 3 sample as opposed to a grade 2 sample account test weight. And so you get, test weight that's pretty poor. It's a light grade 3. And then you get dawn in the crop and you just go, man, oh man, we could see a long, tough harvest for this crop. I hope there's lots of growers out there that have clean corn. I know I've walked cornfields that are clean, but I've also seen an awful lot of cornfields that have me concerned.
Which regions are the biggest concern? Do we know that?
So you can go onto the website, and they do have that map up on the Field Crop News post, and there are definite hot spots, but it is fairly uniform throughout southwestern Ontario. Like, we get hot spots in particular individual fields, and then other areas that don't seem quite as bad. But I don't know, that London, Simcoe, up to Stratford and St. Mary's, Exeter, like that's a huge corn region. They really look like they've got some pretty high levels, and we're seeing the same in Chatham, Kent. Like, I can't really say that there's an area that's totally clean from that perspective.
Okay. Oh man, that's concerning. And the other piece of this is, like you mentioned, leaving in the field to save the drying costs. That can really potentially be, how I would describe that is, save a nickel and spend a dollar. Is that kind of fair in the sense, like, the drying cost sucks, and if you're, we've been covering from a policy perspective, Bill 234 and this exemption from the drying costs with on-farm grain dryers related to the carbon tax. Commercial grain dryers, even without 234, there will be a carbon tax on that grain drying. That's a debate for a different day of the show here. But that cost will be small, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, but that cost will be small relative to what you could cost yourself from what that corn is actually worth if the dawn levels are, at that 2, 3, 4 range, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you wait to harvest, and it's not, Shaun, it's not just the dawn. The other thing that we are seeing, and again, it's quite field specific, but any field that had an additional stress. So remember, we talked lots all summer long about the impact of clouds, about the impact of smoke in the air, about how we seem to be lacking sunshine, and it was helping our temperatures. But what it appears to have happened is that if there's no additional stress, things seem to be okay. But if there is any other stress, wet feet, too much rain, and again, that area north of London, that's where we got that 7 inches of rain in 4 hours, and where those plants sat saturated, they didn't seem to store as much carbohydrate in the stalk. And of course, corn is an amazing plant in terms of its capability to remobilize the carbon out of the photosynthate, that carbohydrate out of the stalk, and put it into the cob. And it does that even on years with lots of sunshine. It just does less of it. But this year in some fields, it looks like we've taken so much, we normally say cannibalized, but in this case, it might even be catabolized. It's destroyed the integrity or reduced the integrity of the stalk. It's pulled that much carbohydrate out. And so you have standability. It goes down. Your yield losses can go through the roof. And if you leave it out there, and I mean, that's the other point about drying is that those points of moisture from 25% up, they come out really easy. If you own your own dryer, it takes almost nothing to get them out. To get it from 17 to 15, that's hard. That takes energy. But those first few points don't take much energy. If you're paying commercial drying rates, they reflect that a bit, maybe not as much as some of us would like. But for the risk that you take from increased toxins in the grain, increased dawn in the grain, the risk of lodging and more header loss, more field loss, so you take less yield, man, it makes zero sense to me. As soon as you can get a good sample in the combine, you have a field that looks like it's got some jib in it, get it out of the field. You will be dollars ahead. Almost, well, I'll say 99 times out of 100, you will make a lot more money getting it out of the field than waiting for it to dry.
You mentioned if people want to see the results, go to the website. Which website are they going to?
Yeah, fieldcropnews.com. That's the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture or Field Crop Team, their website, fieldcropnews.com.
Okay, and we're gonna post about this on RealAgriculture.com as well, and we'll have a link to that report as well to help you out there. Pete, I want to tell you about Ag Expert software for field and finance. It's not a hunch when it's backed by facts. Uncover your facts at agexpert.ca/farmwithfact. Okay, we're going to take a break. When we come back here on Real Ag Radio, Pete and I are going to talk about some of these soil samplers on the go that are out there, really quick and easy. But are they actually accurate in terms of what the nutrient levels are in your soil? We'll talk about that when we come back. You're listening to Real Ag Radio here on Rural Radio 147.
What's next for your fields? At Pioneer, delivering industry-leading genetics drives everything we do. From the scientists in the lab to our local teams with boots on the ground, we are determined to get there first. Developing top-performing products, proven in more growing conditions than ever before. Pioneer. What's next happens here. Visit pioneer.com/Canada to learn more.
You know, there's a reason we call it the Corn School. Videos on everything from planter setup, weed control, field trial results, yield strategies, and so much more. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com has the information and advice you need to help you succeed. Brought to you by Pride Seeds and BASF, Corn School episodes are available at cornschool.com, from RealAgriculture.com, or as a podcast from your favorite streaming service. Download the latest podcast today.
I get to spend every day talking to farmers in the ag industry through RealAgriculture.com and Real Ag Radio. But nothing is more fun than speaking to an audience live and in person. If you're planning an ag event, book a Real Agriculture speaker to make it a successful and memorable experience. Email shaney@realagriculture.com and you can book myself or any other Real Ag personality to speak at your event. Bring your audience all the fun, insight, and energy of Real Agriculture. I love convenience, like stuff that just makes you feel way more productive. Pete, I'm seeing discussion, or hearing discussion, I should say, more and more about these on-the-go soil readers, soil testers, where basically just like an instant, you sort of get a soil read and boom, tells you what some of your nutrient levels are. I can remember going back to 2019, and we were at Agritechnica in Germany. I actually met a Canadian company that was working on this. I'm going to get the word wrong, you correct me, but it was like spectrography or something like that. It was a really, really fancy sciencey name. There's more and more. There's more of these on the market. Are they effective?
So therein lies the $1 million question, Shaun, and there's several companies out there. There's a company out of Quebec, Chris Spectrum or something. I just don't have the name right off the top of my head. But what we're really trying to do with, like, first off, let's take two steps back and say, is testing the soil for nutrients easy? And the answer is absolutely not, because you have the total amount of nutrients in the soil, but the total amount of nutrients in the soil are not all available to the plant. And so we really have to back up two steps and say, well, we want to know what's available to the plant, because that's what's important. You can have lots of nutrients, but if they're all tied up in a heavy clay soil, like high potassium, but it's all locked up between the clay layers, and that potassium isn't available to the plant, well, all of a sudden, that high potassium isn't doing you much good. So soil sampling is an inexact science at the best of times, and it always astounds me that for the little bit of soil that we sample, how actually good we often do with those soil samples. But when you put all of that nebulous kind of trying to sort out what's available, and we've done, I'm not knocking the soil samples that go to a lab, because we have done so much testing so that we know that those extractants give a pretty good picture of what the plant will experience in terms of available nutrients. But as soon as we take that technology to the field, so everybody in the field, they want to use electrical conductivity. Well, electrical conductivity is essentially, how many cations do you have in the soil? That's what's going to give your electrical conductivity. And we proved long ago that you could fool that. You want to fool it. You go out there and you go across the field with some potash, which potash, the potassium is a positive ion. And then you run these probes. Well, they pick up more electrical conductivity because that potash is there, and it really skews the results. So it's good, but it's not perfect. And it's also, every soil is different. So if you're going to use this electrical conductivity, and there's lots of on-the-go sensors that do this, but then after the fact, they go back to that field and they actually pull soil samples from specific spots in the field. And then the relative values of that electrical conductivity, that they give me a much better indication. If I know that reading X was a Y for potassium, then if I get another reading that's 2X, it's probably twice Y, and they do that calibration on a field-by-field basis. We also look at NIR technology. Man, the labs have been trying to get NIR technology to work in the lab because it would make their job so much easier. But in the lab, under controlled conditions, we haven't got soil samples and NIR technology to work. So you go to the field with one of these samplers and they're using, NIR technology. If we can't make it work in the lab, it's going to be tough to make it work in the field. They use sometimes this attenuated reflectance, I forget exactly, ATR, I think. And again, it's like NIR, and they use electrical conductivity. And at some point, Shaun, we'll get there. But if you are expecting that probe, you stick that probe in the soil and it's going to give you the right reading. What did you calibrate it against? And because soils are so variable, when you stick it in a clay, it's different than when you stick it in a sand. And I think that I'm quite sure we are a long way from having that figured out, Jeff.
I think one of the dream scenarios, and I had interviewed somebody that talked about this, where in the spring, you're rolling through the field with your planter or your air drill, and there's like a scanner on the front of the tractor, right? That's scanning, doing the soil test, and then it's computing what the rate should be in real time, and then making the application as the drill goes through the field. That sounds pretty awesome. Sounds pretty efficient. Sounds very real time. We're probably just not very close to that at this point.
I think we've got a long way to go. I mean, we've got soil sensors now that we put on corn planters, and they will tell you the moisture in the soil and whether you should be planting deeper to make sure that seed gets into soil. In fact, they're going to get to the point where they control the seeding depth based on where the moisture is in the soil. But to take that next step to say how much available nitrogen is there, how much available phosphorus is there. We have a ways to go before we're going to be able to do that. I'm afraid.
But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't try, right? Like, I think so many times we're not like we're like 20% of the way there, and people are like, that's stupid technology and doesn't work, never will work. Like that's not good either, right? We need to keep on pushing ourselves from a research perspective and development perspective, because these are tools that, if somebody is able to cross the finish line and create something that really, really works, people are going to be very appreciative and going to want to use it. So I think sometimes we get a little bit too poo-pooey in terms of new ideas and big dreamers and things like that. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not trying to shoot anybody who's trying to figure this out. I am a technology guy, Shaun. If you haven't figured this out yet, you haven't been listening. Like, I am a technology guy, but the technology also has to work.
Yeah.
And therein lies the challenge. And we have big dreamers, and we'll get there eventually. It just always takes longer than we would like to. Even with precision agriculture, man, we started that back in the mid 90s, and it's really just been the last 5 years that we've started to be able to have real good headway with that technology, and we're still not entirely there. That's 25 years for we'll get there, and it's cool, and I want it, but I don't think we're quite there yet.
Well, it just reminded me of I did a interview last week with Douglas Brunt, who has written a book about. Well, the title of the book is The Mysterious Case of Rudolf Diesel. Rudolf Diesel was the man that had a big dream to create essentially the diesel engine. And a lot of people poo-pooed him and said it was impossible, it'll never happen. And he didn't listen to any of them. And obviously, most people in this audience are running a diesel engine on a daily basis on their farm. Thank goodness that he did persevere. And he did come up with that invention, because it's obviously a important part of our farm, indeed. Pete, we posted a video a couple weeks ago of in our Profitable Practices series, which is brought to you by RBC Royal Bank and Farm Credit Canada, looking at farmers that are implementing practices in this area of sustainability, but they're also seeing, most importantly, they're seeing an ROI. And we did a video about the stripper header, and it's had a lot of views. People really, really enjoying that episode. We got a question from an audience member that watched the video. What do you do with the stripper header when the crop is lodged? Can you shed some light on that?
That's really interesting, Shaun, because they actually work far better than I ever would have expected.
Really?
And yeah, you'd think, oh my gosh, it's lodged. I got to go back and I got to use the cutter bar. Like, how am I ever going to make that work? But if you think about how that stripper header works, in the process, as it spins, it's almost like a centrifugal fan, and it almost becomes like a vacuum cleaner. And so it sort of grabs the heads and it pulls them off the soil or off that lodged canopy just enough that we can generally tend to get them into the stripper header and get the grain off of them. Now, there's exceptions to every rule, and I'm not saying that they always work, but they work in lodged crops just much better than I ever expected they would. And yeah, you go like, wow, again, there's technology that you kind of go, oh, that won't work. No, actually, it works.
That is
just
cool.
Pretty much. Yeah, almost as good as a cutter bar, right? Like, there's lots of times you got to go one way with a cutter bar, because if you're going the same way as it's lodged, you can't get to underneath it. And no, these just they do a decent job.
Pete, to finish up here, we were talking about the weather earlier, and higher temps during the day in central and eastern Canada compared to western Canada, but you're still seeing some frost in parts of Ontario specifically. Is bad timing, okay timing? Just shed some light on that.
So for anybody who has got double crop soybeans out there, especially later planted double crop soybeans or any frost-sensitive crops, you're hoping to push the envelope with some late tomatoes, something like that. You pretty much got wiped out last night. That was our first really hard frost. So we're kind of, anywhere from -1 to below -4. Once you're below -4, it pretty much shuts down everything. But it's not a big deal. There's a lot of corn that, it's going to brown layer now, but I think it had shut down anyway from all the cold temperatures. We just got to the point where the milk line was really moving slowly, and that's one of the reasons why we have lower test weight. But it's not a big deal, but I don't know. We still would like some heat. We'd like some heat to get the winter wheat crop further advanced, to get more tillers on it. We'd like heat. We don't want this western weather quite yet.
Okay, Pete. Well, hey, thank you so much for the time here today. Really do appreciate it. Have yourself a great week, okay?
Yeah, you as well, Shaun. Thanks a lot.
And make sure, everybody, that you download this week's episode of Wheat Pete's Word. It's Pete's podcast where he answers your agronomic questions. A new episode drops every single Wednesday. And get that podcast at RealAgriculture.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, we'll be right back with more here of RealAg Radio on Agronomic Monday right after this.
Infuse some energy into your next corporate event, customer meeting, or conference with RealAg Radio, Canada's national agriculture radio show. Create a unique experience at your next event with host Shaun Haney, broadcasting RealAg Radio live on SiriusXM, featuring exciting guests, captivating interviews, and the latest news from the agriculture community. Contact advertising at RealAgriculture.com or call 587-787-1795 to book your on location with RealAg Radio today.
What were the issues in your fields this year? Did you do a soil sample? What is your soil sample telling you about some of the nutrient issues that you might be having going into next year? What herbicides did you use? What residues you might be concerned about? What weed issues did you have? What crop residues did you have? How well do you know your fields?
Get the answers to all the questions you have about your pulse crop at the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com.
It's now time for a product spotlight here on RealAg Radio, and we're talking to Corteva here today. We're joined right now by Chad Garrod. He is Portfolio Marketing Manager out in Eastern Canada with Corteva. And Chad, great to chat with you.
You too, Shaun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, okay. So today we're going to talk about Lumigen. And I know the company is really excited about the product and all of the solutions that it provides. Let's, start off the top. What does Lumigen represent? What is it doing?
Lumigen is really a mark of assurance. You've done the work as a farmer to pick the best seed for each field. Seeing that Lumigen logo on the bag means you've got the confidence that it's protected with the best treatment on the market. Lumigen's exclusive to Corteva AgriScience seed brands and designed is proven to work on your farm with our genetics.
Let's talk about some of the components from the perspective of corn and soybean Lumigen recipes.
Sure. Our soybean treatments include several different options. Mainly Lumiderm is our advanced insect protection, as well with Lumigen FST and Lumicina. Lumicina is a advanced fungicide seed treatment that provides the best protection against Phytophthora, which gives healthier and more vigorous soybean stands to protect the high yield potential in the bag. There's also several options for inoculant nematicides to add to that as well. So we've got several options for each farmer's needs in the soybean lineup. Our corn seed treatments include Lumivia, Ipoconazole, Lumicin Pro, and new this last season, Lumialza, a new nematicide package.
So, Chad, you got to tell me, how does Lumialza work? What does it do?
Yeah, so Lumialza provides nematode control. So it colonizes with the roots to form a biological barrier from nematodes attack. Lumialza also grows with the roots to provide protection deep into the soil profile. So not only does this provide an extended zone of defense, but also provides over 80 days of protection, allowing prolonged growth benefits throughout the entire growing season for the corn plants.
Now, you mentioned nematode protection. Why is that so important?
Yeah, we haven't talked a lot about nematodes over the past 20 years in corn production, but they're often overlooked as those yield-robbing pests. I think it's particularly that they're small in size, only visible with a microscope, and nematode damage usually occurs in small patchy patterns. It can be confused or with other crop stressors such as nutrient deficiency, drought, or other insect damage. Nematodes can facilitate also the transmission of other plant diseases, which therefore weakens the plants, making them more susceptible to other diseases throughout the growing season. Because this creates a living biological barrier, it offers a mode of root protection that grows with the system. So this makes Lumigen seed treatment a robust tool for broad spectrum nematode management on your farm. And it's included in all of our corn seed treatment recipes. So at Corteva, we're not only determined to bring the best genetics to the market, we're bringing the best treatments to protect those genetics to help growers maximize their yield potential.
And it's kind of the grower, looks at some of their past experiences, what treatment would serve best for their farm, and then choosing that product at the point of order. It's really kind of a la carte and customization for what's best fit for your own operation.
For sure, and we want to protect the genetics as much as possible because as a farmer, that's our job. That's your job, is to protect what's in the bag. We can't increase yield potential. We can only protect that genetic potential. So putting more in the bag to help you efficiently protect and target those, whether it's insects and diseases and nematodes now, that's a great benefit.
Awesome stuff, Chad. Hey, Chad, if somebody wants more information on Lumigen or Lumigen, where do they go and where do they find it?
They can go to corteva.ca and click on our Seed Applied Technology tab there, and they can find out all this information and more. And of course, contact your local Brevant or Pioneer sales rep or territory manager.
When we come back on RealAg Radio, we're going to get to the top ag news stories of the day. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147.
What's next for your fields? At Pioneer, delivering industry-leading genetics drives everything we do. From the scientists in the lab to our local teams with boots on the ground, we are determined to get there first. Developing top-performing products, proven in more growing conditions than ever before. Pioneer. What's next happens here. Visit pioneer.com/Canada to learn more.
Canola is more than just a pretty face in the prairie landscape. It's a big business, both here and around the world, that requires you to be informed and up to date on everything it takes to grow a successful crop. The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com has an expert library of video resources covering markets, agronomy, and more to help you grow a healthy and profitable canola crop. Visit canolaschool.com today. Brought to you by BASF Canada and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
It's now time for the top ag news stories of the day here on RealAg Radio. Your co-op grow team stays up to date with the latest research and technology to help support your entire operation. Talk to our team for advice tailored to your farm's needs. Co-op. It's here for your farm, here for your family. Learn more at coop.crs/farm to learn more. And listen, that is so co-op is co-op.crs/farm. So please check that out. Okay, let's get to the top ag news stories here. A bit concerning story in regards to another strike, and we've seen a lot of strikes coming out of the pandemic. Well, we got another one. Shipments on the St. Lawrence Seaway have come to a halt as several hundred Seaway workers have gone on strike as of Saturday night. So members of 5 local chapters in the Uniform Union, approximately about 360 workers in Ontario and Quebec, they're on the picket line. And if you're wondering what the fight is over, it's wages. And how far apart are they, you're probably asking? Well, the union said the employer and the union remain, now get ready for it, they remain 1,000 nautical miles apart. Yeah, that doesn't sound very good. Nice pun. Agricultural products including wheat, corn, soybeans, barley, oats, and flax account for more than, 40% of all seaway trade, according to the company. The seaway is also a crucial corridor for nitrogen, phosphorus, and potash fertilizer, with the fall period serving as a critical time for imports to supply eastern Canada in the spring. So, yeah, when we talk about disruption when it comes to the fertilizer market, eastern Canada has really, really had a struggle. Now, Fertilizer Canada is calling on both parties to come to an agreement to end the strike. So there's that. The Canadian Chamber of Commerce says the federal government should immediately intervene to prevent further disruption to supply chains, resulting in higher costs and inflation for Canadians. The Chamber says the Seaway generates an estimated average of $34 million in economic activity per day. How about them apples? So we'll be following this very closely throughout the week. Hopefully this strike can find a conclusion. I should mention, though, that the Canadian Labour Code states the grain shipments through licensed terminals must continue during a work stoppage, but there are anecdotal reports of grain being stranded by the strike as of Sunday. And as of Sunday, the St. Lawrence Seaway Management Company said it was waiting for a ruling from the Canada Industrial Relations Board to ensure grain continues to move through the Seaway. There's about 100 vessels outside the system that are infected. They're affected by this labor disruption. Crazy. Bank of Canada is widely expected to hold the line on interest rates this week after inflation fell unexpectedly in September while economic growth continues to flounder. Until a week ago, the jury was out on whether Governor Tiff Macklem and his team would increase borrowing costs again on October 25th. Inflation had been ticking higher over the summer, and Canada's top central bankers were sending hawkish signals that more tightening might be needed to get rising prices under control. This story is from the Globe and Mail. A string of data releases published last week appear to have settled the case in favor of keeping the policy rate at 5% on Wednesday, according to analysts and bond traders. There's also data today talking about how Canadians are struggling with monthly mortgage payments, and that number is actually on the rise. They're also following that up with worries of potentially higher payments when it comes to time to renew with their bank. Data released on Monday by the Angus Reid Institute shows 15% of mortgage holders say they find the financial aspect of their mortgages very difficult, which is up from 8% in March and 11% in June. The survey says that despite expectations, the Bank of Canada will hold its key interest rate steady at 5% when it announces the decision on Wednesday. Related to banking, there's a story in the Globe talking about how Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is calling for the federal government to reject Royal Bank of Canada's proposed takeover of HSBC Bank Canada, saying their deal would reduce banking competition at a time when homeowners are struggling with high borrowing costs. In an interview with the Globe and Mail on Thursday, Poilievre said blocking the deal is a clear step the government could take to address affordability concerns. Mr. Poilievre did not say what he believed would become of HSBC Canada if Ottawa were to terminate RBC's deal, which it clinched after Britain-based banking giant HSBC Holdings decided to sell off its Canadian unit. So they're leaving regardless. So, I think there's going to be some resonate. The message from Poilievre is going to resonate, I should say, because of some of the data the Angus Reid Institute has come out with this week in terms of people's ability to be able to afford some of those mortgages. Big merger and acquisition news in the oil and gas industry. Chevron to acquire Hess for $53 billion, bolstering presence in Guyana and solidifying U.S. oil industry dominance. Chevron announced it plans to purchase the Hess Corporation for the large amount. This acquisition will provide Chevron with a significant stake in Guyana, one of the world's emerging oil-producing nations, thereby enabling the company to enhance production growth and deliver better returns to investors. The deal includes a premium of approximately about 10% to the 20-day average share price for Hess shareholders, valuing the company at $60 billion. Now, a couple commodities we don't talk about a lot here on Real Agriculture. I don't know how many people that are listening are in the olive oil or the orange juice business, but prices have been strong in both of these. So global olive oil prices have surged. Olive oil prices have skyrocketed, more than doubling over the past year, creating challenges for American consumers and businesses alike. Factors such as drought in Spain, who is a major olive oil producer, and unfavorable weather conditions in Italy, Greece, and Portugal have severely impacted olive oil production. The U.S., primarily importing from Spain and Italy, faces the consequences of these global disruptions, resulting in significantly higher prices for consumers. A roughly 25-ounce bottle of extra virgin olive oil, for instance, has seen a nearly 22% price increase in just over a year. Now, on the orange juice front, you ask, you've been probably waiting for this information with anticipation. Orange juice prices are at record highs and could keep climbing. Prices at the grocery store are up more than 10% from last year. Prices for frozen concentrate orange juice futures have more than tripled since late 2021, with prices setting records week after week. In grocery stores, a gallon of orange juice on average costs about $9.18 US. During the 4-week period ended October 7th, that's up more than 10% from the same time a year ago. So, but both it sounds kind of weather related, but it does show how Mother Nature really does play a role, has a say, plays a factor in some of the prices of these commodities, just like the regular commodities we talk about here on a daily basis: wheat and corn and soybeans, pulses and alike. So if you need some orange juice, you're going to see a bit. And wait a minute, why are we buying olive oil? We should be buying like canola oil, for example. Someone's got to bring that up. I think let it be me. I'll bring it up. If you don't like the price, and I'm going to say this: if you don't like the price of the olive oil, then switch to canola oil. You should be cooking with that anyways. And someone's going to send me an email and say, "Well, did you know?" I don't know what the price comparison is between the two, but I know in our house, it's not olive oil; it's canola oil. Yes, and it should be in yours too. And some people would say soybean oil. Whatever tickles your fancy, as they say. That's all the time we have today for the top ag news stories of the day. We're going to really be following this strike in the St. Lawrence Seaway. I believe Lindsay Smith tomorrow, who's going to be hosting the show, she's going to have some comments from groups like the Canadian Federation of Agriculture. This is a concern. This is a concern, getting fertilizer into the eastern side of the country. And when we talk about 40% of the Seaway's volume being ag commodity related, that should get your attention. Whether that's imports of some products or that's obviously the export of some of those other commodities as well. This is one we need to be rectified. We need to have rectified, and part of the challenge though is that do we really see the government moving on this? Probably not. There's going to be a bit of a slow play here. So it's definitely one that we'll be following closely here at Real Agriculture and RealAg Radio. That's all the time we have today for the program. I really appreciate being joined by Chad from Corteva, as well as, of course, Peter Pete Johnson. Have yourself a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you for downloading this episode of the RealAg Radio podcast, brought to you by Economics. With one-of-a-kind tools, research, and content, Economics is farming's go-to information resource. Find it all on nutrient-economics.com or download the app.